I think that different governments and different people within different governments have different perspectives on it. I think that the collective perspective of most of the governments who want to apply sanctions to Iran is the hope that doing so will pressure the government to make concessions. But I do suspect that there probably are some individuals within different governments who are hoping that, well, even if you couldn't get the government to make the concessions, perhaps you can inflame popular passions and that will force the government to move. I have a lot of reservations about the gasoline sanctions, both for the reasons that you mentioned, which is that the regime is already preparing to withstand them, but also because they're the kind of sanctions that really can affect the average person. If the regime wants to, it can withhold gasoline supplies from certain sectors of society, and those people may be hurt, and people may even wind up dying. And what we should have learned from the Iraq sanctions is that when the average people are really affected, and when sanctions can cause malnutrition and death and other severe problems among the populace, it's very, very difficult to sustain them internationally. And because the regime is so uninterested in making compromises and so uninterested in the impact of sanctions on the average people, I think we need to recognize that any sanctions regime is going to have to go on for a long period of time to have any impact, and that means that we have to tailor it very carefully so that it affects the regime, not the people. I think that one of the real problems that we have right now as an American, as a member of the international community, is that because of the changes in Iran and the consolidation of power by the most hardline elements in the regime, it is unlikely that we're going to be able to use the pressure of the sanctions to secure short-term compromises. You have to be thinking long-term. And the problem with that long-term is, as you've pointed out, those centrifuges are going to be turning at Natanz. I hope they don't give them very long. I think that at this point in time, especially with the revelation of the Qom facility and the fact that clearly the regime was concealing it and lying about it, that ought to inject a certain element of alacrity in what the international community does. But at this point in time, it's just hard to know what other members of the international community are actually going to agree to.